Welcome to another edition of your Energy Quick Chat. I am Justina Okechukwu. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission recently released its first and second quarter reports for 2022. The report analyzes the state of the Nigerian electricity supply industry, covering the operational and commercial performance, regulatory functions, and consumer affairs, amongst others. To unpack this report is my guest, Rumundaka Wonodi. He's the founder and CEO at ZKJ Energy Partners and founding CEO of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, or NBET. It's good to have you on the show, sir. So what's your take on this Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission report on the state of the sector?
If you look at it, it's not a very positive trend in all, because you look at the key indices and you can see that when it comes to things like the output, billing efficiency, revenues, it seems that there's been a decline between the first quarter and the second quarter. Some places there's a little gain, when it comes to billing efficiency and things like that. So, in all, for a sector that is struggling, that you expect to see improvements, it's not coming as would be desirable.
Now, for the second quarter, like you said, both the total revenues collected by discos and the amount billed to customers were reduced compared to the first quarter. Any idea what the problem is with this score?
That is a pretty straightforward thing. Revenue is a matter of price times quantity. And if you looked at it, you can see that total generation output dropped, from the first quarter to the second quarter, and that is responsible for that decrease in revenues. The fact that there is a dip of about 6% in generation output, that easily explains that.
Now, when it comes to restructuring, is there a need to restructure the discos, like privatizing them 100% to the private sector?
Well, the question first is, why do you want to privatize, and what is the problem today that we have? The primary problems with the distribution is that there are no new investments coming in. We need capital to build out the disco, improve the network, do mass metering, and look at other things, and have a working capital to pay bills that come in, especially for power supplied by the generation companies, right? So if you look at that, is the issue of capital. That's what everybody talks about, the structure. And then you ask yourself, who can put the capital at this moment? Apparently, the private sector is unable to. The state of the industry and the economy makes it very challenging. So the ones that are already in there are unable to do much. So if there is anything that needs to be restructured in any way, I think that you should find a way for the state, the government, to make immediate investments, and then we can begin to talk about maybe operations and maintenance of the distribution companies, and then when the market is stable, you can try to privatize them. At this moment, I think it's rather challenging. You have investors who have been in this sector, in these assets, having it very difficult to raise additional capital. And the regulatory landscape, I'm not talking about as provided by the sector regulator, but I'm talking about, even the capital markets, the regulation, foreign exchange, and what have you, makes it very challenging to raise capital right now. So privatizing or government trying to sell down its 40%, I don't think is a pathway. Government should be bold, as it had earlier on contemplated, make investments in the distribution companies as shareholder loans, and then with time, it can then decide to sell its shares when the sector is more stable.
So now, what's the weakest link in Nigeria's electricity supply chain?
I think that if you look at everything, at the end of the day, we've you keep hearing that the sector suffers from revenue to cover the cost of production and generation and distribution, as you may consider it. But we've had a problem with quantities, right? Again, getting more power into the system. And the biggest challenge to that, we understand, is the network, the constraints in the transmission and distribution sections of the value chain. So the weakest links is definitely the networks, transmission, distribution. We need to build that out so that we can have a throughput of even what is available today can be delivered to homes and businesses and reflect the economy.
Now, in that report, the NERC mentioned the huge metering gap for end-use customers. How can the government address this issue?
Well, again, I think that at any point in time, there is some finite amount of resources that is available to the government. So the question is, if the government has the capital, should it be fixated on metering or on actually getting more supply to consumers? I think that you can do bulk metering. You can have estimated billing the way it's done in a more transparent manner, and you have bulk metering, and therefore you can spend money on getting more electrons to consumers. Where you want to deploy meters that cost 100,000 to people whose consumption is 5,000 and 6,000 or 10,000, you have to ask yourself, what would be the time frame for them to actually pay for those meters if they were to be really at a market rate, if you understand what I'm saying. So your quicker, if you ask me, would be, again, to make the investments in the network and consider mass and bulk metering of consumers within clusters, and that way you can get them more electricity. If you have the money, government could continue doing what it's doing, metering interventions and providing funds, and then letting the discos or people consider and put them together as an asset class which people can invest in. But again, if you don't have enough electricity, then you don't have the revenue to pay for those meters. So it's a matter of priority as far as I'm concerned.
Now, in terms of energy generated, transported, and delivered, what efforts has the government made to ensure the quality along the national grid?
Well, there is a critical project, and I will repeat myself because I think that's the priority. So many things are always interlinked, right? So if the networks are not stable, they're not robust enough, then we continue to have the issues of grid collapse, which comes from where discos or gencos are not responding to the commands of the system operator, and therefore you have the frequency going beyond the bandwidth that it's been agreed that it's operationally optimal, right? So if you have a network and steady investment in the transmission system and the distribution system, you're better able to secure the network. But one other thing that needs to be done, and we've talked about this, is to have a SCADA system that would actually allow managing the grid. And finally, this is a structural and regulatory issue. There is a need to actually unbundle the transmission company of Nigeria so that the system operations could be independent of the the transmission component of that, the transmission services provider, such that it would allow the system operations to be more independent and actually, on that note, be able to put in some discipline. But other than that, the first thing is that you have to make some capital investment in the infrastructure, both for the SCADA system and then also building out the networks.
We really appreciate your insights into that quarterly report by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Rumundaka Wonodi, founder and CEO at ZKJ Energy Partners and founding CEO of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, or NBET. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And that's it on your Energy Quick Chat today. I am Justina Okechukwu. I'll see you next time.